Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy with an interesting twist on it because our guest is Mary Mitchell. She is a Chicago Sun-Times columnist. She has been that for the last 20 years.
20 years.
She is on the editorial board. She is a muckety-muck, would you say?
I wouldn't go that far.
I mean, you are a big cheese
well.
because you're on the editorial board of Chicago Sun-Times.
That's true. That's
you have
true.
a lot of impact on opinion. And, so what you think, what you say, and how you think about it, it counts.
Well, it certainly is interesting just sitting around and listening to what other people bring to the table of editorial boards and want us to form an opinion on it. So it's been a very interesting career.
So when you get concerned, and you may feel you highlighted more than the average journalist in covering politics or public policy in the city of Chicago, that you may cover and know more about the inner city workings and care more about than most of the other mainstream journalists. All right?
Well, I think what it is...
I mean, you put that into your columns.
I put that in my column because I see myself as an advocate for people who don't get hurt. These are people who live in the communities and they can't get City Hall to listen to them or county government to listen to them or the feds to listen to them.
These are people who don't
These
get
are
what?
people
Who don't
who
get
don't
help?
get help.
Help, okay.
Who don't get, their voices aren't heard. And so
You're their voice.
I'm their voice. That's how I
So-
see myself.
If the Chicago cops were trigger happy around blacks, that's something you'd call to the public's attention.
Well, that's something I would have to examine, and I would have to do it by specific incidents in which I question the use of force or bring to the forefront and ask the questions about when is it okay for a policeman to pull his gun?
When is
what
it
happened?
okay? Mary
when is it
Mitchell,
okay?
Chicago
Right.
Sun-Times columnist, member of the editorial board on the Sun-Times. When is it okay for a Chicago cop to decide this is a situation where I got to shoot somebody?
When he fears, when
With
there's
black
fear,
or white,
when he fears for his life, when he fears that he is going to be harmed, then I think that
When he has a reasonable
Right.
basis for fearing for his
well,
life
weapon,
or harm or
if
major
he thinks
harm.
if he thinks that a weapon is involved, someone's going to pull a weapon, that's a reasonable.
So if somebody's pointing a gun at him
Of course.
or a rifle,
Of course.
that's enough.
Right.
You
But
shoot and
I
ask
think
questions
so.
later, right?
Well, the ask question later is the problem because we are
Because if
still
you don't, and somebody's pointing a gun at you, you may not be around to ask questions,
But we are still the city where an unarmed woman, LaTanya Haggerty, was killed because she had a lock or a police mistaken something in her hand.
It
for
looked
a gun.
like a gun.
That looked like a gun.
It was a cell phone, right? Or was it
cell
locked?
phone. I think it was a cell phone or a lock, but
yeah.
it wasn't a gun.
Right.
And so those are things that you have to be concerned about. And these are things that people in the community are concerned about.
But there was a recent incident, right? It was involving a 13-year-old child or a
Right.
young adult, however you
Yes.
want to put it.
Well, a 13-year-old is a child.
Is a child.
Right.
He's a
And
juvenile. He's certainly
I think
juvenile.
in anybody's community, a 13-year-old is not a young adult. It's
What do you
a
have
child.
to be, like 16 to be a young
I would
adult?
say a young adult is 16, 17.
Okay.
Going on 18, but not a 13-year-old.
Where was this child when the shooting occurred?
So the child is over on the South Side Street, and he is...
What area?
I'm trying to recall, but I'm thinking it is near Chatham area.
Chatham. Okay.
Right.
Which is a pretty nice area.
It's a very, very nice area, very nice area. But here's the point, that this child, this 13-year-old, was accused of having a BB gun, and the police stopped him and wanted to question him, and the police say that he turned the BB gun on them or pointed the BB gun at a police officer. He thought it was a gun. And actually, if you go on some of the websites and look at what is said to be the weapon, it does look like a gun. And so
You said it looked like an AK-47.
Yes,
That's-
yes.
that's pretty
I think
scary,
So. All right. But here's my point. So in that instance, you can understand why the police would shoot. And it's regrettable and it's unfortunate. The problem with that, and the reason I wrote about that incident, is because under any circumstances, when a 13-year-old unarmed, basically unarmed kid, did not have a weapon that would pose any type of real danger to a police officer, is shot 8 times, then that's a regrettable situation. That's not something.
What does that
that's
mean?
Not,
It's
that
regrettable?
means that means that's not something you want to see happen. You wouldn't want to see it happen in any community. You would want.
What if
to,
he were shot 4 times? Would it be okay then?
I don't think it'd be okay if he shot once, but I think it's extreme when the child is shot 8 times.
But if a gun, it appears not to be in doubt that the individual. What's the child's name?
We don't give the child's
thought
name
you
because
mentioned that
13
in your
years old.
column.
I don't think I did.
Jamal.
I don't think I did. But
Oh,
if
that's
I
why I read
did,
it, yeah.
but if I did,
Jamal Gordon?
well,
or
no,
what
if
was
I
it?
did at this point, because there's no charges, and I don't know what
Okay.
he hasn't gone to court, I don't want to
Okay.
mention his name. I'll just
All
say
right.
he's
I
13
just thought you
years
had,
old.
so,
right,
yeah.
and I may have. I just don't. I'm right. So many columns, I don't remember now.
Right.
But
Okay, so this 13-year-old child, it really, I mean, well, I can't say it's established now, but it appears from what we know that this 13-year-old child did point something that you described as
As a
looking
BB
like
gun.
an AK-47, but
And it was a BB
but
gun.
it was it turned out in fact to be a BB gun at the policeman, and he responded by shooting 8 times. How far away was this child from the policeman when that happened?
well, according to what I've been told, the child was in the alley. He was. They didn't give me. The police department didn't say how many feet he was away.
Could be like 20 feet.
But the police department didn't say. And
didn't
you know
know.
what? And
Was it
and,
dark?
and,
Was it
and
light?
the other
Or
thing,
what
the
time of
other,
day was
it
it?
was in the afternoon, late
So,
afternoon.
okay, visibility was good.
But the other thing is, I would not be so quick to say what happened, because what we've seen in Chicago is that when an incident is reported by the police or even reported by the news, it seems as if the party is guilty, and then we find out later it didn't happen quite the way police said that it happened. So I'm very careful about,
But you said it's regrettable, and you
it's
should,
regrettable.
and you don't know the facts.
No.
We don't know the facts.
It's regrettable. I don't care what the facts are, because a 13-year-old kid has been shot 8 times.
Well,
And you don't want to. I don't want to live in a city. I wouldn't want to live in a city where my 13-year-old kid could get shot 8 times by police. That there's no conversation. That the tension between police and young people is so great that you cannot even have dialogue. That the option for the police is to shoot a kid, and the option for the kid, the course that the kid takes, is to point a weapon at police. That to me is a very bad set of circumstances, and I'm not blaming the police for that.
But it sounds like
But
that,
I'm not blaming the community for that. I'm just saying this is not the type of city that you would want, and that the police department and the community will have to work together to improve the relationship between these parties, so that these communities will feel safe. They'll feel like the police is their friend. The police is there to serve and protect them, and young people won't be running from the police or pointing objects at the police. Pointing
I
any type
understand
of
that point
object
that you're
at police.
talking about,
Yes.
which is almost a separate point. That is the tension, the mood, the feeling in the community that exists in general between the police and those community members is not good. I think that's what you're saying.
It's terrible.
It's terrible.
It's worse than not good. It's terrible.
Right. Okay.
You
Well,
know.
I'm not sure what the right word is, but the relationship that exists between the police and the people that are there to protect and serve in those
Right.
areas
Right.
that we're talking about is terrible.
Right.
Okay. And so things like this are more likely to happen than if it were a better relationship. But on the other hand,
Yes, I think so, because I think that a 13-year-old, for a better relationship, a 13-year-old would be less likely to point or be accused of pointing an object at a police that could not harm in any way be a match for a police weapon.
But
So
you-
so you don't think the kid was really trying to kill the police because he had a BB gun. And unless you think the kid is so stupid that he would think that a BB gun would stop the police from detaining him. No, I think that
but why would the kid point the gun?
I don't know that the kid pointed the gun.
But
What
assuming
we're
he
saying
did,
is
why? Because
that's what
assuming
he's
he did,
accused of doing.
But assuming he did, why would a kid point a gun, BB gun or not, at a policeman and not expect
Because there
to
is
be
a
dire
total
consequences?
lack of respect. There's a total lack of respect among many young people for the police, and that's what I'm trying to get to. How do we improve that?
Okay.
How do we improve it? How do we change that dynamic? Because I don't want my 11-year-old, 12-year-old grandson walk down the street and the police is having a shootout with a bunch of teens. I don't want that to happen. I want to see a better relationship so that there's dialogue. When we were growing up, the police was our friend. When something went wrong, you ran to the police and you told the police about it, and the police took care of it. Today, people don't run to the police; they run from the police,
Okay.
and that's the problem.
But you would concede, all that aside, if a 13-year-old child points a BB gun that resembles an AK-47 at a policeman, it is justified for that policeman to react by shooting even 8 times that individual?
I think when you get to the 8 times, that's problematic.
So 4
for me.
times.
Yeah, 4 times, 2 times, 1.
It's,
You know,
it's,
I would.
it's reasonable for the policeman to react by shooting that individual,
It's reasonable
right?
that the
Because the gun's being
police
pointed at him.
would
He's
know
fearing for his
that's
life.
something that looks like a gun, whether it was a cell phone, a BB gun, or a comb. If it looked like, if it was his finger, and he pointed his finger at the police, and the police said, "Oh, it looked like a gun."
No. But there's a difference between a lock, a cell phone, your finger, and a BB gun that resembles an AK-47.
Okay, but just the next time a young lady is killed in an automobile because she has a cell phone, then we'll have a conversation about that. Because there's no difference. If the police fears for his or her life, he or she is justified to shoot. And that is what's going on. This is why you're having more
because there has to be
shootings.
reasonable justification for that fear.
What's the reasonable justification?
A policeman can't just say, "I was afraid for my life." And I think it's harder for a policeman. I'm not saying it's impossible. Harder for a policeman to make a case. And I'm not a policeman, so I don't know. I'm not even.
I think it's very easy.
We'll get off of the subject in a second. But the point I'm making is, it's harder to make the case that it was a reasonable justification if it's a lock or a cell phone or a finger, because there you could say, well, I thought it was a gun.
Right.
But if the person's holding a BB gun that you acknowledge resembles an AK-47, it is easier to say this person had a reasonable justification for that. The other facts may contradict that, but I'm just saying that because reading your column, that's all I know about this. I have not read anything else. I've just read your column, and my question is, based on that, it seemed reasonable, or it could be reasonable, upon further investigation, to know that this cop reacted that way, even with that bad relationship.
But the point of the column was not whether it was reasonable or unreasonable. That was never the point of the column. That was not the point of the column. The point of the column is, what do we do to repair a relationship so we don't have these incidents? And it's important to make that distinction, because I think people read it, some people read it just the way you read it, that I was trying somehow to say the police shouldn't have shot the boy. That was not my point at all.
I mean, I wouldn't say the whole column was like that.
All right, because that wasn't the point of the
part
column.
of it seemed that way, and if you read it carefully, I think you would see the other aspects that you pointed out. But if you didn't read it so carefully, you might say, here's Mary Mitchell making a case that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Let's hope other people read it more carefully than that.
We hope. Well, you have an advantage because they're in print, so on TV they may miss it.
Right.
But it does segue into the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, who's been here, a mayor about 80 days or so. We're taping this on the 7th. We're going on 90 days, I guess. So there'll be a big thing probably in 100 days. What has he done? He's already trotted out his accomplishments, I think, after 30 days. But look, this guy probably was elected because, not probably, he was elected easily because the African American community, majority of people supported him in that community, right?
True.
And that made it easy, okay? Because he was going to win a significant, I hate to say this, it sounds like it's all racial and so forth, but race does count, right? You agree.
Well, so, you said it, I didn't say it.
Yeah,
okay?
a white guy
I didn't say
a white guy running against, an Hispanic and a black person kind of has an advantage still in the white community. If his name is Barack Obama, then maybe the advantage is a little less. That's for the black person you're running against.
Right.
But in this case, that black person was Carol Moseley Braun, who you'd probably acknowledge is not the strongest candidate in the world these days.
Yeah, I think she was a poor candidate.
She was a strong candidate in the olden days, but not now.
Yeah, a poor choice for a consensus candidate, so to speak.
But without getting into all that, so Rahm Emanuel gets elected with the substantial boost from the black community, especially if you count Barack Obama, who implicitly endorsed him, but not explicitly.
Right.
And so when Barack Obama says, this is my guy, that's going to help in the black community, and it helps even in the white community. So with all of that, Rahm Emanuel gets elected. Does he maybe feel he really needs to perform more so than if he didn't get that overwhelming support by the black community? And one thing he has to do is make the streets safer. And we're just talking about that.
Right.
And one way you make the streets safer is to get more police there. And two, you need to improve the relationship. Okay.
Right. I think.
So is he doing that in the first 90 days? Or do you see signs that Rahm Emanuel is moving in that direction? You might argue it's the right thing to do irrespective of the politics. Even if he didn't owe anything to this community, say they didn't support him, I think I can argue it's the right thing to do anyway. right?
Right.
But even more so when this community supports you politically.
Well, and I think he's very sensitive to that. Let me just say that I've been around Mayor Emanuel now a couple of times at press conferences and things like that, and he loves his job. He's enjoying it, and he wants to perform. He wants to keep his promises. You know, he wants to show the African American community, particularly because he got such support there, that he understands them and he understands their pain. So you are beginning to see things like a plan to put more police officers on the red line. You know, the red line, we call it the black train. And why is it the black train? Because a lot of black people take the red line and complain every day about homeless people sleeping on it, about panhandlers, about criminals, you know, knocking people on the head and taking their cell phones. Well, Rahm Emanuel wants to do something about that. You know.
Is he doing something?
Yes, he has made a proposal.
You can see it's a proposal, but there's no more. There aren't more police on that or individuals who could prevent that.
That's what he intends.
Intends
That's
to
what
do.
he said that he was going to do.
He's
now.
asking for that help
Yes,
from the city council.
Yes, he is, and he's also. One of the other issues was the food deserts, the whole situation of there are no grocery stores in so many African American communities on the west side and on the south side. And that's twofold. Not only are we talking about not having proper food and nutrition for families, but here is a situation where if you got stores in the community, maybe you will hire people within the community and give them some jobs. And there is a link between people who are idle and not having anything to do, and crime, because people who are idle are going to get themselves in trouble just standing around on corners. So I think he's sensitive to those kinds of things. So I think he really has a good, strong field of people around him that he turned to, and they were not the established leadership. They were not people like the Reverend Jesse Jackson or people like people over at the Chicago Urban League or any of that stuff.
Who are they?
A new crop of people, young people,
Are they
younger
minority?
people. African American, in the African American community.
Can you name some just to give us an idea who these folks
Melinda
are?
Kelly is a good one. Okay, she leads the Chatham Business Association, and she was also on his transition team. Annette Holt, who is the mother of Blair Holt, was part of his team, his transition team, and she is a fire captain, and also she understands the agony of the violence on the street. So she's also part of his group.
She again is?
Annette Holt.
Annette Holt.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean,
she's part of his. She's a fire lieutenant.
His transition team, and now people who he turned to within the community. So instead of going the route of let's go down to Operation Push on a Saturday, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but instead of taking that tack, he's having little offices in his meetings in his office with people that are normally not at the table but have a stake in the community.
New blood,
and
so to speak.
Excuse me?
New blood, so to speak.
Yes,
people
new
who have
blood, so
not
to
been
speak.
a part of the Daley administration now are a part, in a sense, of the Emanuel administration.
And they should, as well, they should be, because these are people who didn't, they don't have a contract. They never bid it for anything. They're not part of that they wasn't part of that
They're just trying to make life a little better
White
in
House.
their community.
I mean, not White House, but City Hall circle. They're just people who are now understand. They understand what the community needs, and they're trying to communicate that to the mayor out of the public eye, I would say.
Now, we've talked about education before on this show 2 years ago.
I know you got me to say something about vouchers. I remember that.
Did I get you to say
Oh,
something?
yes, you did. Yes, you
Well,
did.
I was going to ask you because 2 years have passed since then. Did education improve in that 2-year period in the city of Chicago? Because you said it's very important that these individuals in the city of Chicago get jobs. There's a correlation. If they're working, they're less likely to commit crimes and get in trouble. But I imagine there's also a correlation or relationship between people who get educated well in being able to get jobs, and therefore get less involved in crime. So let's take it one step further back. You went back to jobs and food deserts. I'm taking it back to education.
Okay.
And I'm just asking you, Mary Mitchell, you're closer to this situation than I am. Did education in the inner city improve in the last 2 years since we last spoke, December 7th, 2008?
I think education overall, I cannot say that it improved dramatically, but the offerings improved. You have now a school called Urban Prep, in which 100% of kids who attended are accepted into college. We didn't have that, a few years ago.
These
We
are
didn't have those
African-American kids.
These are African-American young males. This is an all-male.
Low-income parents.
Right, and
Maybe
these are
single-parent families, possibly.
possible, but not all of them.
Not all. Okay.
The
point
equation
is,
here,
there's a
they
major
could
change.
not They could not afford to send. These are families that had smart kids, many of them very smart kids. They couldn't afford to send their kids to the University of Chicago Lab School, where Mayor Emanuel was going to send his kids, and can't afford to send his kids. There is an alternative there.
This is a charter school.
This is a
The Urban
yes.
Academy is
It
a
is
charter
a charter school. It's not a voucher school, but it is a charter
But
school.
it's not subject to all of the rules and regulations of the Chicago Public Schools.
Well-
They have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how they teach, who they get to teach, et cetera.
Well, don't
right?
you think that's changing, though? I mean, we always talk about the rules and regulations of the regular public school, but guess what? You know, legislation was passed in the last session, which gave principals a lot more power
Excessively
to hire.
overpraised
Well,
legislation.
but they gave them a lot more
Mary,
power
it's
than
time
they
to
had.
cut the BS, okay?
Okay,
Just you and me.
I don't think this is BS.
No, because you and me, Jeff Berkowitz, Mary
Okay,
Mitchell here,
right.
okay? I'm talking about kids who've been in this neighborhood in the last 12, 15 years under the Daley administration. Reform started presumably in 1995, okay, when Paul Vallis came and started, they took control. So 15, 16 years later, I don't see a lot happening. I mean, I see 8% of the kids in charter schools. That's like 30,000 kids out of 400,000. There may be 50,000 kids who are sort of the elite who are doing well. There may be 100,000 who are sort of getting by. You still got you get 200,000 kids in failing public schools in the CPS. Paul Vallis would agree.
So
Mayor
your
Emanuel
alternative would be what? Shut them all down?
My alternative is do something and do something now.
Like what? Like, give me an idea.
Well, you're the columnist.
Oh,
You're on the editorial board. I'm just a
you're
TV
saying
show
that
host,
in 15 years, nothing has changed, and I'm telling you that in
Some has
15 years,
changed. No,
some
I'm not
things
saying
have
that.
changed.
No.
Okay.
Paul Vallis sat in this chair, and I got a lot of respect for Paul.
Right.
And Paul made some very good changes. He, introduced some structure, some new buildings, some safety. Kids are now ready
and so
to learn.
they're using the turnaround method where a school when all hope is lost, when the school cannot improve within a certain period of time, you
Like
shut it
5
all
years or
down.
something,
You
yeah.
you put it all,
It's
close
taking
it down.
too long, Mary. That's my
I
point.
agree, it takes a long time, but you know what? We didn't get to this public education problem overnight. You're not going to fix it overnight, and not just in Chicago.
Let's try.
That's across
Let's
the
try.
country.
What do we have to lose? What do we have to
what
lose?
this
Because
system,
are you afraid that the Dodge School has it finally closed, but for a long time it was had like 10, 15% of the kids reading at grade level? Are you afraid it's going to go down from 10% to 5%?
I don't think.
I just
no.
don't see what we lose by trying.
Oh, yeah, but
What do we lose?
trying what?
Oh,
I mean, when
well,
you finally get to
the same stuff you were talking about in December of 2008.
When you finally get to the point
You
of
said it.
understanding, when we get to an understanding of what it takes today to educate our children, it's not just a teacher's problem, it's not just a security problem, it's not just a family problem. Use all those pieces together. And frankly, I like the idea that people are beginning, as CPS are beginning to think outside the box. I like the idea that you have someone saying,
time.
maybe we should knock on some doors
It's
and
about
go and
time.
actually see. Well, it is about time, but better late than never.
No, but
better
it
late than
needs
never.
a lot more because I don't want to say for 200,000 kids we'll help you in 15 years, but we can't help you this year.
I think, what I want to say for this year is that if you begin to lift up some of the models, like they do in New York City, take some of the schools that are performing and are doing well and use some of take what they're doing and transfer it to the system, then you have a better shot of improving schools. But it's not going to happen overnight. And I don't think that Rahm Emanuel or Claude Brizard, Jean Brizard, or any of these people who coming in new are going to change the structural deficits within that system.
Well, structural
Not
deficit, we're
overnight.
spending $15,000 per kid per year in the CPS. You know that.
Yeah, they're spending $15,000.
It's a $6 billion budget.
They're spending
400,000 kids,
$15,000. But you know what? My
$15,000 per kid per
grandson
year.
goes to school with tuition is $30,000. Okay, so what is $15,000?
Wait,
and they have the best. My grandson,
grandkids
yes,
goes
my
to
grandkids go to a school.
a private
goes
school?
to a private school.
A grade school?
A private
College?
grade school.
A private grade school. And they spend $30,000 per kid per year?
a kid.
Well, I don't think that's needed. God bless your grandson.
Well, I
and
think
I hope
it's
he
needed
does
because
well
you know
or she
what?
does.
You know why? Because my grandson is doing very well. All A's, can read very well.
No, but we just don't need to spend $30,000
But how can you say
read.
that? You don't know what you need to spend
Because there are
we're
schools
stuck
right now,
on,
there are
because we are stuck on spending $15,000.
Mary, take this book, School Choice.
I've read this book. It's been
Comes
around
out from
for a while.
the Heartland Institute. It compiles all
Yeah, I've read it.
finding. Is there, it's interesting, left Barack Obama for the U.S. Senate, stuck right in
Yeah,
here.
right.
And what does it say? Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Barack
can.
Obama, yes, you can. You could say to your buddy, Rahm Emanuel, Okay, both of you could benefit from this. Brock's going to be in a re-election campaign soon. Ram wants to do something great so he can one day be president, I'm sure. Both of those guys put their minds together, and you could have not 30,000 kids in charter schools. You don't even have to go to vouchers. I think they should, but I'm a
Okay,
reasonable
but where would
guy.
they go? What would they, what would, I'm trying to figure out what is your suggestion?
My suggestion is if you have $15,000 purchasing power and you're a parent and you have 30 others who are a similar mind to you and you want to go somewhere outside the public school in your area, I'll come over there and build a school.
And you know
okay?
what? And I think
and
the
I'll,
parents-
and I'll do a damn good job because
And
I
think
can
the
teach a
pa-
5-year-old
I
kid
think
how to
the
read
parents
just
who
like
have
that. I don't need to go to an
same
education school.
mentality have put their kids in urban prep and all these other schools of choice and have made a choice. That is not the problem with CPS. The problem with CPS is
Enough of them
that there are a
can't-
lot of kids whose parents are not even visible. Their parents are not even at home. They're being raised by grandma or grandpa or aunt or.
Nothing wrong with that. Barack Obama was raised by his grandmother.
Unless
Barack came out
let me
okay.
tell you what's wrong
Do you
with
think
that.
he came out okay?
Let me
I
tell
think
you
he
what's
did.
wrong with that as a grandmother. I've raised my kids. Okay, I don't have the energy.
Yeah.
I don't have the
You
energy
could do a
that
damn
I
better
had.
job than many people.
I don't have
Energy
the
or
energy
not,
that
yeah.
I had when I was raising my own kids. And my point that I'm trying to make here is that yes, the motivated parents are doing what motivated parents do, and they're doing a very good job for their kids and making good choices. We've got to figure out a way to get the parents who are less motivated to spend time with their own kids, prepare their own kids for school, to help them do their homework, to challenge their kids, to take them over to the library, to sit down and read
It's
with
not
them.
enough,
We got to
Mary.
do that.
It's not enough. I don't
And
have
I think-
time.
and I
I'm
think we have
surprised
to
that
do that.
you are more patient than I am, okay? I mean, you got the patience of Job. I mean, I just don't
No,
have that
I don't have the patience, Joe. I just know that this problem, for all the talk that we do about this problem,
You haven't tried it,
nobody
Mary.
has identified what's the real issue here.
I have.
Well, then
Herb
you know what
Wahlberg
you need.
has, the
So then
Heartland
what you
Institute
need to
has,
do
the
is go
Illinois
down and
Policy
sit down. You
Institute
need to
has,
sit down with
John
Ron
Tillman
and
has.
tell him how to do the job, because right now,
Bring him over.
I think
Ron,
there
you
are
come here.
parents
We're going to continue to speak
that
as
we
the
have to
credits
do
roll.
this. We have to do this together. It has to be a collaboration between the parents, the police, and the educators to improve education.
We need
in
to shake
Chicago.
things up here, Mary.
Yeah.
We
Well,
don't
I
have
think you
time.
will shake it up.
We don't have time.
I think they are trying
Bring
to shake
Ram
it up.
over here. I haven't been able to get him on since 2003 when
You've
he
been
was a
trying to get him
congressman. The last 8 years. I mean, okay.
That would be an interesting show.
Yeah, we had him on in 2002. We had him on in 2003. Anybody want to see that? Give you a private viewing after the show, Mary.
Right.
All right, but seriously, we got to shake things up. I mean, we had a whole slew of topics to cover. I just threw it out the window because you were engaged, I was engaged. We got at the core of the problem. You got to have a good relationship in these low-income
Yes, you do.
communities between the police, between the educators, and the people who are doing the hard work of both,
Right.
and the community. Okay.
Right.
And we got to shake things up. We got to say 30,000 kids in charter school. That's not enough. Ram, you got to find a way to get. If you don't want to do vouchers, I would do it. But if you get 100, 200,000 kids in charter schools in 4 years, you could do that. Okay. You want to tell me you don't know how good it's going to be, how it's this and that? I'll take the chance. Okay, Mary. I guarantee you, it'll be better. That's all I have to say. It'll be better. Okay, right?
Right.
If I can do better.
I'm going to say that.
Look, the charter uses the motivated parents. I got to say
Let's get
this.
the parents involved and find ways to make them welcome and a partner in this educational process. And I think that you will see great improvements, even if you don't get
Look,
to
you say
30,000
that,
kids
you'll
in
find
charter
Carolyn
schools.
Hawksby referenced in this book by Herb Wahlberg. Carolyn Hawksby, African-American economist.